Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Scuttlebutt. I'm your host, Sean Hall, the Director of Programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club. We heard part one of our conversation with three Army veterans who are now actors in a topic that we were super excited about, veterans and art. We had such a long, good conversation with them that we decided to split it into two, and what you're going to hear now is part two of that conversation. If you haven't heard part one, make sure you download it, look it up wherever you get your podcasts, or jump back into YouTube and go back to part one. And we also want to again thank our sponsor, D&D Metal Recycling and Auto Salvage. They accept all types of metal, both ferrous and non-ferrous, that may be generated by industrial manufacturing, construction, and demolition, small commercial entities, as well as individual customers. They have a wide variety of material handling equipment and are capable of managing any type of job in a timely and efficient manner. You can contact them for quotes and availability at D&D, the two letters D, D&Dautosalvage.com. Thank you, D&D, for supporting this podcast. As always, please like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell on YouTube so you can be the first to know whenever we release new episodes. Thank you so much and enjoy the show. I want to get back to the Becton, James, and the idea that this idea of community. So you seem very passionate about building this community, going up to Niagara, building that organization into that community. And are you looking at collaborations as well in this COVID sort of realm that we've found ourselves in? How are you sort of adapting?
Well, we are very much in the burgeoning phases. As of January 5th, 2021, it's become an official entity, an official LLC. And I've been moving forward, more specifically, courtesy of throwing back to NYU. They have a thing called the NYU Tandem Future Labs. So I was a part of that program, which really allowed me to breathe life specifically and more focused onto what the Becton is. There's definitely a collaboration. A lot of it is about collaboration. One of the biggest changes with the Becton is we're getting away from the idea of the board outline and trying to put this type of governance in the hands of actual artists. So as it stands now, I have about 15 board members, and they are all in the community, in the artistic community, one way or the other. Like, they are playwrights, they are directors, they are filmographers, they are writers, scrum and film, they are choreographers, they are dancers. I'm looking to get glass blowers and metal workers. Like, I'm trying to bring back the idea that arts expression is where, I think human growth exists. It's about getting back to a certain type of applied sciences through art. This is a way of my really kicking the idea of capitalism in the ass, because that's always at the bottom line when it comes to your normal board. How can we get this money? Where are we getting this money about? And it's not about the money. It's about us being able to grow as a society. And I find that the best way that people are able to get into themselves is to truly find the reason to tap into self for the sake of creating. Like, you think about, you have to know yourself. You have to know your mind to create a short story. You have to know yourself. You have to know your mind to be able to write poetry. You have to be in your body and know yourself to be able to embody that body in movement and dance and be on stage. So the collaboration is to bring back the sense of community for the sake of community growth through community art awareness. So yes, this is all collaboration. And there's a aspect of it that's about bringing veterans to the forefront, and I can say this is courtesy of Decrute. Again, the fact that you use Shakespeare to, help neutralize some unrest that a lot of us have is beautifully brilliant, and it works. That just says the power of performance art, the power of spoken word, the power of song, the power of dance, the power of using your hands to play with clay. This is what brings us together to our humanity, because these things is what fuels feelings. Like, you have to be able to feel, and that's something that the military did a good job at doing, taking away our feelings. If the military wanted you to feel, well, you probably wouldn't be in it. This is the best way for the military to work is you all have to have that common hive mind. There is no individuality. That's why you're all wearing the same green, you know. But you come back out into the civilian sector, like I said, you have to get re-established and reacquainted with the other colors of life, and I mean that across the board. Well, it's the color of the mind, the color of your neighbor, the color of society, the color of politics. You have to bring all these things back to the forefront of your mind in real time.
How do you do that? I'm sorry to interrupt. How did you find how did you find that coming out of that 4 years, long time to be in that sort of hive mind space, and then coming back into the civilian world and having to sort of branch out, find your feelings again, and what helped you do that?
Well, the thing is that was always a part of the game plan, and I thank you for that question because I really thank you for that question because about a month ago, something clicked in me where it was actually longer than that. It was creating my CV for the first time, and a CV is the true history of your entire work experience, and it was seeing that for the first time at 46 years of age that I realized I remembered who James Edward was before the military. It's interesting because my whole life had been broken down to after the military and before the military. But I'd completely forgotten about those 28 years of existence that I was before that moment had happened. And so it allowed me to remember why I made the choice to go in. And then I caught up with myself. And so it wasn't that I had to change. It was that I had to get reacquainted with the person that I was. So I went into the military for something very specific. And now that I got that nugget of self, now I feel that I'm more well-rounded and more grounded and more self-aware. So it wasn't something that I had to find. It was something that I just had to reawaken to. So it was actually quite easy. And it was like something just clicked. And I was like, oh shit, I remember now. Because back then I was JB Becton. Then you go into the military, and then I'm just Becton. And coming out, then I realized that the entirety of myself being James Edward Becton, sometimes the third, there's going to be a book in that, the truth behind the third. Because there's been so much life that I've lived that has allowed me to find myself now in my 48th year, where they say in your 40s is where life really begins.
Well, that's good because I turned 40 this year. But I do have to highlight then that what's interesting is that you've named your company the Becton.
Yes.
And
yes.
Is that some correlation to your military service then?
That's in correlation to just who I am. So I can say yes, because I found so much about the reality of being a Black man, because I was experiencing racism and unrest in the military. It's a real thing. People don't realize, and you can't imagine how shocked I was, how naive I was, first of all, to think that it would be different, but in fact, it was actually exacerbated. So it was that fact that I really realized what Becton was, who Becton is, what it means to be Becton, that I wanted to bring that to the fruition. Yes, Becton is a Black man, blackety black, black, all day long, and that there's power in that, and there's nothing to be afraid of, and I'm not threatening, that this is artistry. So yeah, and on top of that, the Becton just sounds awesome.
Definitely.
Come on
now. Jenny, I saw you shaking your head a lot during what James was saying and smiling. Does a lot of that echo with you about remembering who you were before and reconnecting?
I was shaking my head definitely to the concept of there's a split inside of me still. I think there's the before Jenny, and then there's the after Jenny, and in the middle is the military. And much of my military experience has defined who I am in the world now. Even though it was such a negative experience for me. I don't come into rooms and say, I'm a proud Army veteran. I don't like ceremonies. I don't like parades. I don't like being thanked for my service because I'm not particularly proud of what I did in the Army or how we treated people in Iraq. And I think there's many rooms like that, many veterans in this world, in this country, that feel like that and are silenced because we're trying to counteract the past of what happened to the Vietnam veterans and how they weren't welcomed home and people were not able to separate the war from the warrior. And I'm not saying that we don't continue to hold veterans as valuable pieces of like the backbone of America, but we also have to understand that that backbone was built on blood and lies and betrayal for some of us, and also military sexual trauma that, you know, people who served together also turned on each other. And, you know, sometimes civilian asks, why should I care about military sexual trauma? And I find that a really interesting question, because where do you think those predators go after they're not prosecuted in the military? They go into your communities. So that's something to be very mindful of. That's why you should care if people are prosecuted in the military for military sexual trauma and sexual assaults. And the other interesting thing was when James was talking about creativity, and I love the correlation between the military and the arts. For me, is everything in the military was very black and white. It's like, this is the orders, this is what we do, you know, and there was no room for gray. There was no, and when things got gray, that's when things became challenging with moral injury or military sexual trauma or PTSD or TBI. I could give you every letter in the alphabet. But creativity gives you the opportunity to see color again and make choices without anyone dying or anyone being harmed. And you can write whatever you want. And there it is again for you in black and white to see, to unpack, to speak, to figure out who that person is through the writing, through the experience, through the performance. And then when you know, people come up to me and be like, well, why would I want to do art? Like, you know, that's so whatever, feminine, foo-foo, whatever, like weird association people have with art. And I'd be like, remember that feeling when you were shot at in Iraq or in Afghanistan? That feeling, that's what standing on a stage is like, because so often I hear military members thinking the best of themselves is behind them, but they haven't really embraced the fact that in front of them is so much more than just being shot at or waiting to die, or, you know, that next big thrill. That next big thrill could be you standing on stage speaking your truth and knowing someone in the audience has experienced the same thing, and now they're strong enough to instead of committing suicide, they're going to get up on stage with you or go to a workshop.
Yes, 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 and yes.
And I did want to speak about why Shakespeare works really well, if I may, Sean. So
that was going to be one of my questions. So you are spot on.
You don't mind if we self-moderate here, do you?
Perfectly fine. I'll just chill.
Yeah. we all just kind of streamline into each other.
Yeah.
So as Jenny talked about the black and whiteness of the military, and in the face of trauma, what goes offline are our imaginations. And so what we try to bring back online through our facilitations, through the various programs that we work with, is our imaginations, and allowing the mind to picture that beautiful scape behind James, allowing yourself to speak Shakespeare in that garden, right there under that tree. And most of Shakespeare, a large portion of the canon, is written in iambic pentameter, which is a metered verse, and that meter happens to mimic our heartbeats. So just by embracing that poetry and the rhythm of that poetry, we are automatically inviting people to get in sync with their own heartbeats. And what is more strategic in allowing you to embody your feelings than getting in touch with your heartbeat? It's basic and central to our existence. And not only the heartbeat, but that poetic language helps our higher brain come back online. Often in the face of trauma, our amygdalas, our primitive brains are firing and firing and firing. And so with the use of Shakespeare and poetic language, whether you're writing it, as Jenny does so beautifully, or using the Shakespearean words, that text allows the higher brain to come back online.
Art exploration is truly a ticket back to self. You know, it's a gateway back to self. Because art can only really live through yourself, that expression of self. That's where that truth lies. And when you live in society where, you know, that exploration is not often explored or even validated, it's sometimes neutralized to the point where it's not even anything. But that's the importance of that exercise. As I'm rubbing my soul, I'm like, this is where your life is. You know, and the military did such a good job of stripping that away, that you have to come back out and get back in touch with that, with this, you know. It's a ticket to self.
Oftentimes, the brain is the center of what's going on, and the body is dissociated from that. So, with our arts activities, what we're asking people is for the somatic experience. Understand what's happening in your body. Where are you feeling things? Because disease is often a manifestation of dis-ease.
This is beautiful. I think I have one more I have a million more questions, but I have one more question for the sake of time before we get to Jenny's poem, and I want to show a bit of MJ's reel. But one question I have for all of you, and Jenny, I want to start with you because you've talked about sort of the negative experience that you had in the military, but is there something in the military that a skill that you learned that helped you in your artistic life? And if not, I'm fine with that too. I'm very interested to hear if yeah.
Like, oh no. The skill that I learned in the military that I applied in my artistic life, it would have to be the camaraderie. It has, yeah, that's what I always reconnect to whenever I am feeling my most alone, and then recreated as I built my organization, is having the camaraderie, the community, and the creativity, and linking all of those things. So the camaraderie was key, and learning how to truly be there for someone. And then when you're coming out, not only jumping on the grenade, but filling your own container up so that you can give from a place that is purely helpful instead of hurtful to both of you. The idea of carrying burdens, I find to be a little bit repulsive. Like, why do we want to carry everybody's shit around with us? Like, I don't want to carry my own shit. Like, so how can we find a way to release it, to channel it, to, you know, send it out to disappear into the clouds, into the universe, or become a beautiful body of work that people can relate to or resonate with or have empathy for. We can do so much more with creation than burdens. So
Love that. James?
I'm sorry, I was too busy listening to Jenny. What was the question again?
A skill that you learned in the military that you are using in your artistic life.
That the skill would be the knowledge of myself. You know, because I realized that in this world, for as much community say the shorthand that we have as veterans, at the end of the day, it is just me. We are separate individual entities, separately existing on this entity, this rock. So I learned the most about myself and the power that I have, particularly as a Black man, you know, living in this realm where I am a statistic or expected to be a statistic, being less than apparently. That just really emboldened me to find the security and knowledge in myself. You know, that I live my life now. There ain't not one damn thing that nobody can tell me about anything else. You know, so that's the biggest thing that I got. And that's the exact reason why I went in the first place, because I needed to know these legs that I'm standing on. Who is it? Who am I? What is this energy? What is this this motion. So that's what I got out of it: a complete knowledge of self.
I will tell you that though I am not a veteran, I think the thing that has taught me the most about myself is my 16-month-old, because boy, there ain't nothing like she's a lesson teacher, and she was, she's been on the earth for less than 2 years, but she makes sure daddy knows who he is.
She's challenging you. This is what selfless is. It's selfless service. You're outside of yourself for the benefit of someone else, and that mentality puts the world in a different perspective, because it's not, as I say, it is just me in this realm, but it's not just me. Like, I'm not living in a vacuum. I interact with these other galaxies, these other heavenly bodies that we are, and it just strengthens. I think it strengthens the idea of community when each member of that community can really stand on their own 2 feet. That's what I think is what strengthens society, when you know that you have merit, that you're just not some shadow because somebody or some demographic of people choose to see you as a shadow. No, 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 no. No, it's so much larger than that. It's just a sense of self.
Nice. MJ.
Hi, I'm going to try and hold on to 3 different threads here. So Sean, what I'm going to invite you to do when you get off the podcast is just watch how your 16-month-old takes up space. Watch how your 16-month-old, when they stand, their belly's soft, their knees are soft, their feet are about shoulder width apart, their mouths are open, and they're just taking in the world. They are taking up space. And we often attempt to mimic that in our work as decruiters, by asking our people to assume the toddler pose. So you have a direct visual channel to that in your house, and I'm going to invite you to check that out. Second thread is I want to quote Jenny Patkinowski, tying it back to something that James said. Jenny says often that you are the expert of your own experience, and James was talking about that. So shout out to Jenny on that. The third thing is a Jonathan Larson quote. Jonathan Larson is the composer, creator of Rent. And my favorite quote of his is that the opposite of war is not peace, it's creation.
Mm-hmm. I am super excited to get onto this next segment. This episode has honestly been everything I've wanted it to be and more. So thank you all for this. First, what I'd like to do is show a bit of MJ's reel. It's fabulous. She sent it along to me. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to share my screen. So if you're listening to this on audio, make sure you pop over to the YouTube piece for a bit of MJ's reel. I'm going to share my sound because we do that here on Zoom. I'm sure everybody can see. It's a beautiful headshot. Thank you for this, MJ. And off we go. We're gonna watch the first 2 clips here, and I might pause in the middle because I might have some questions.
Drop your weapon! Who the fuck are you? Part of that tribe hoping to stop us? Such fools. We won't be stopped. Not by a kike, or Jep, or anyone else for that matter. You will never stop Father's work.
Shalom, motherfucker.
I am consumed by love.
Oh man. Like, Hunters, was this when did you film this? What did you think of the character? Why did you just get headshot? Like, what happened there?
Yeah, we shot Hunters in 2019, and it was released just right before the pandemic hit.
Mm-hmm.
It was an extraordinary experience. My character is a Nazi bomb maker, and obviously it's very interesting playing the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I have to reframe that for myself is that I am passionate about my own cause. So not judging my cause, but passionate about my beliefs and what it is that I'm trying to accomplish in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I get through playing the bad guy.
And where can people see Hunters?
Hunters is on Amazon Prime. The star is the amazing Al Pacino.
Fantastic. All right, we'll watch one more clip here from Wilt. Get ready to have a hanky available.
The sun is always shining when I'm with you. You're the flame in my heart, and I promise to be true to you. I love you. Well, I was speechless. And he looked into my eyes, and he said, count them.
Man. That was, yeah. Yeah, snaps on that. Like, I'm just like thinking about saying that to my daughter. I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah,
Tell me a bit about Wilt.
Yeah, Wilt was an indie film, and I love doing indie film in New York because it's a chance for creators to, get their work up and running. Not everybody has the kind of budget that Hunters has, and so it's beautiful to be able for that people can tell their stories and create, and that we can get together on smaller sets and still tell valuable stories. And it's beautiful to be able to play. An older woman, and again, shine the light on the fact that we have stories to tell, that we have value, and that we still deserve to be listened to.
Thank you for bringing that back. And thank you for the reel. And before we get to Jenny's poem, I want to pop over to James and ask you sort of what projects do you have coming up? What are you looking most forward to?
Truly breathing life into the Becton. There are a couple projects I'm in the middle of right now, a couple of shows, but like I said, my perspective and my has changed. I don't see myself so much as a performance artist anymore, so much as an artistic executive director. So it's about the Becton. It's building the Becton and the consortium up. So that's the primary focus right now. As I mentioned, there are a couple of things I'm in the middle of, things that I'm working on, and I'm sure they'll come out when they do. But it's strange, like I said, how the perspective has completely changed. It's ceased being about plugging my performance aspect, because I really think, like as I said earlier, every choice, every decision has led me up to this point of being an executive artistic director, and I couldn't be more proud or happy for this process. That's what I just am in awe about, because this time last year, this wasn't something, this wasn't a thing, but it sure hell is now. So yeah, we in it, sleeves rolled up, ain't no turning back now, man. It's happening.
And I love hearing the passion for it in your voice, James. Having worked in the theater realm for 10 years, understanding the whole, the politics, top to bottom of the board and the staff and the management and all of those things that kind of are difficult to all point in the right direction in a professional theater. Hearing you talk about the new ideas that you're bringing to this space really excites me. I can't wait to find out more about the Becton, how it's going to be established, what you're going to be doing. We'd love to have you back on with everyone from the Becton to do anything with us, please. It's so exciting and refreshing. It's refreshing. It gives me chills just hearing the passion in your voice talking about what this is becoming. And I can tell it's going to be very successful because of that passion. And Jenny, the poem that you have selected, this was a labor of love in two different ways. One, the poem's usually a labor of love, but two, I asked you to bring a poem and you were like, wait a second, which poem should we do? And I thought we would wrap our time together here with a poem, and you can sort of lead us in. What is the poem about? What's it titled?
I'm actually using an excerpt from our Rites of Passage performance that we did at Poetic Theater Productions. It was the first time that I collaborated with a sculptor and a poet, Maria Salazar, and also so we combined our poetry together and also did clay on the stage. We're going to be having an encore presentation of Rites of Passage. Veteran Voices, Poetic Theater Productions. So I'll send you that link when we have it live. So I'm just going to do a little section of that, and it's the Wonder Woman section is what we call it. I don't know what
I'm a big nerd, so this, I mean, you've given me comics, acting, and veteran stories all in the span of like an hour. I'm gonna go to bed happy tonight. So
all right, let me pull the magic up here. She was molded out of clay that was formed out of the heart of the earth beating in her fingertips, the roots within wiggling her toes, as the Amazonian women created her with their bond of motherhood, of womanhood. Each heart following the beat of her own inner drum. Her tribe invested in her, created her form, her fingernails. All her power came from truth and love in a ritual that created life without man. Wonder Woman was not given life by Zeus, a man. Another woman's story rewritten by a man. I wish someone had told me that I would have to work my entire life to find all the pieces that chipped off of me like paint over the last 20 years. I do everything I can to separate my current daily life with those militaristic rituals. Yet I love when everything is in its place. I hate parades of plastic patriotism. I don't want to ruck march and do things with my body that created great injury and lasting effects in each cell of my being. I don't need to invest in something that never served me. I am not just a warm body with a number. I roll my hunched shoulders up and out of protective posture, lengthen my shortened neck, release clenched fists and jaw. Why would I want to relive the way of life I am still recuperating from? Used, abused, and discarded when no longer viable because our boots, our vehicles had no support. No support for women in 20 hours of convoys compressing their birth-bearing hips, laced with ammunition, Kevlar vests that do not adhere to the female form, and try to relive it now that I'm out? Fuck it, why? Like Wonder Woman, I am molding and sculpting myself with my tribe, looking towards a future, not losing myself in actions of the past. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just letting that sort of simmer.
There's so many different layers of the military service and of coming home and then doing it through the artistry. I can do as many interviews as I want. I can write articles. I do all of these things. But it's the moments when I'm in my own poetry, my own words, where the potency arises and it's in my body and it's in my voice. And then I can just send it out there. So as angry as I am about everything, I can just come back into my present body and be like, we're doing something about it.
Mm-hmm. That's it right there, in your present body and doing something about it. That's what that is right there.
And I just wanted to highlight how beautifully Jenny used the breath.
Yeah.
Breath is the source of life, and we use breath in our facilitation as a way to be present in the present moment, to fully experience what's going on in the present moment. And it's a way for us to be able to ground ourselves so that we can allow full expression of self.
Boy, I want to thank you all for your truths today. I'm kind of verklempt right now. I just, I think there's something that I've learned through my time in the theater and just the idea of performance and what it speaks to me and storytelling that really have aligned for me personally. And I just want to thank you for hearing you all talk today begins to reignite that feeling of creation. I feel like a lot of times, I feel like over COVID, you get a little stagnant. Like, okay, here's the daily grind, what you're doing every day. I see the same 10 walls. And my 16-month-old, God bless her, she is the silver lining to all of this. I've watched her every day, and you said, MJ, beautifully, just what does she look like when she's standing there? And it's this just innocence and openness. And it's that thing that that's burned in my brain. But hearing all of you talk about these passions today and what you've experienced and boy, it just makes me want to go up and start coloring with her and singing with her and painting with her and sculpting with her. And it's like, yes, more of that. And that, oh boy, that's what this world really just is starving for. Because I think when we all come back and the art takes over again, that's something that we need. We need that. That's why it's been around since the fire and the cave, and it will continue on until the sun explodes. This idea, this passion of sharing our truths to each other and our stories, and that passion that erupts out of all of us, boy, that's exactly the thing that gets me up in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Sean.
And to our listeners, I hope that you feel that same passion, and I hope that you follow James Edward Becton, Mary Jo McConnell, MJ, Jenny Pakanowski. We will have links posted. Please take a look at all of the work that they have coming up. Support them, support the artists in your region. Know that they have gone through hell and high water over the last year, and they still have the passion to bring these stories to you. So seek them out and tell them that you see them. Because it's going to be so important whenever we're back to full capacity that you make your way back to the theater, back to the Poets Center, back to the sculpting, glass blowing, all of it. And I would love to, the next time I head to New York or wherever you guys are, I want to see you all on stage. So I'm looking forward to that moment. To our audience, thank you for joining us. Like, share, subscribe. The best way to get us out there. Thank you all, and we will see you on the next episode of The Scuttlebutt. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for another episode of The Scuttlebutt. I want to thank D&D Metal Recycling and Auto Salvage for their generous support and sponsorship of this program. You can find their locations, get quotes, and ask about availability at D&D autosalvage.com. That's D&D autosalvage.com. We'll see you next week here on The Scuttlebutt.